everybody, welcome to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today I'm being joined by somebody who pops up every now and again, my cousin, Dennis. And Dennis, we haven't really caught up in a while, so before we get into us talking about the Strangers films, I just want to ask how you been, buddy?
Doing all right, man. I actually, it's funny. 2 years ago, you started this channel, and I was dabbling in the physical media side of the world, but for some reason, the last couple months, I think you know what it is. Fall time comes. I get really excited about horror movies, and you let me know about the Friday the 13th that was coming out, and I have been on a tear, watching a ton of films, collecting as much as I can, building out collections. So, been doing good. I've been excited about this, so thank you for reigniting that into me.
That's all I live for, and I'm glad to hear you collecting physical media, because, obviously that's what I live for.
Yeah, yeah, of course. But how about you, man? How's the channel doing? How you feeling? What's going on?
Channel's doing good. We're coming into spooky season, so like best time of the year for the channel, I think. Getting to talk
Mhm.
horror movies for 2 months. Finally, and what's really cool about the Strangers movies is these were some of the first movies you reviewed on the channel back when we first started it. So it's fun to go back and now, like when I think of the Strangers movies, I usually think of you because I know you've always been very passionate about the first one, especially.
Yeah, big time. And that's when, a couple months ago, I don't remember the exact release date, but they released The Strangers Part One, and I was super excited. Couldn't wait because I love the series. The first one in particular, and that's again, like I said, a little over 2 years ago now, probably you started the channel, and I told you I was like, hey, listen, super excited for you. If you want free labor, I'll do as many little reviews as I can just to give you some content. And one of the first ones I picked was The Strangers and The Strangers Pray at Night, just because I love them so much. I love to talk about them. And then when part one came out, I texted you right away. I was like, dude, part one came out. If we, hold off till the spooky season kind of starts, we could talk about all three of them again, and it's a full circle moment. So I appreciate you letting me come on and have this discussion with you, and I'm excited to see, how we both feel about how the series has gone so far, and maybe where we see it going soon.
Yeah, there's a lot of hope for it going forward. And the series started all the way back in 2008. It's funny because back in 2008, we were hanging out a lot. I saw this in the movies, but I don't remember if you saw it in 2008.
So oddly enough, I don't think I did. I think I waited until it came out on DVD and then got the DVD and watched it because I don't remember ever really seeing it in theaters or anything. But I remember the first time I bought it on DVD, thinking the case, the artwork, seeing all the characters on it and everything was creepy. So I was like, don't judge a book by its cover, but that's exactly what I did. And I
Mhm.
brought it home, watched it, and I, couldn't be happier that I did.
Yeah, no, the first one is definitely, in my opinion, still the best in the series. And after rewatching it recently, I was like, wow, I really undervalued this movie because it's a very well constructed, scary horror movie that what I think really adds to it, and I'm sure you agree with me, is that they spend a lot of time in the beginning fleshing out these characters and having just be an engagement that she said no to. I mean, like you feel the pain for Scott Speedman in this movie because him and Liv Tyler are the couple in this movie.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of horror movies lose. A lot of times, especially when it's like more of a slasher kind of film. I don't know if you, this is, I guess, a slasher film. It's not super over the top, but I'd put it in that category. But a lot of times they kind of just brush over stuff. It's like, oh, here's a character, and there'll be like a one-liner where they say like, well, dad died and I hate you, mom, and then that's it. That's the character build. There's no depth to it at all. But like you said, they take the first half of this movie with the uncomfortable car rides and everything else that goes on. I mean, spoiler alerts.
Yeah, definitely for all three movies. We're full blown just speaking out loud about what happens in these movies.
Yeah, yeah. So absolutely spoiler alerts ahead here, but like when they get to the cabin and he's got the rose petals out and he's got, everything is so romantically set up and you could just the difference of how the night could have gone. They were had she said yes, this would have been a celebration. They would have been celebrating their love and I mean it still would have been ruined, but
It wouldn't have ended good.
yeah, yeah, but the tension that they build between the two of them, I also like how they did it where both of them, neither one was like a villain in the situation. It wasn't like one was being overly mean to the other. You could tell they both felt really bad.
Yeah, well, that was one thing that the movie doesn't tell us is why she said no. We don't even see her directly say no in any of the flashbacks, right?
No, I don't think it's just I think you see her like say no. There might be like a small clip when they're at the wedding and she does say no where she says, but it's small. It's, nothing like it's not a monumental moment. Obviously, we don't recall it if it does happen. They don't really dive into it. It's almost just like she didn't want to do it. She wasn't ready to do it. He was. Now it's kind of awkward because it also doesn't seem like she wants to break
Break
up with
up.
him.
No. Like it does seem like
So,
she still loves him. Maybe they're going too fast, but the movie doesn't tell you that because that's not necessarily what's important. We just know that on this night she said no, and now that's this tension that's in the room and things are about to get 10 times worse.
yeah, and that's when the iconic knock at the door and the question of is Tamara home?
Mhm.
Just that's when the night begins for them really, and unfortunately it doesn't end well.
No, it does not end well for them at all. And that's when we dive into meeting these characters. I mean, they get introduced very slowly because it's not like they just break in. For a movie like this that has a very limited amount of characters, because besides the couple and the three of them, one other character, I think his name was Mike, was it Mike? Played by Glenn Howerton, who, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I love seeing him pop up in anything. And just
Mm.
being Glenn Howerton. So
Yeah,
that was cool. So what did you think of that? The fact that they were able to like make this movie last as long as it does, but really a limited amount of characters where people are really used to those over the top kills.
I think that's the beauty of it and why I loved it so much. And I want to kind of touch base on that as we talk about the progression of the series too later. But what makes this so great is, sometimes I feel like movies go for the slow burn, right? They want to slowly build, but sometimes it takes way too long or it's not really done as well where it's not that tense. But this, I think, building that foundation of the frustration with the couple, mixed with how slowly these characters start to come into play, I think it really, really leaves you uneasy. And genuinely, I think it's the setting. This because you always see like cabin in the woods and it's pretty stereotypical, but this weirdly this is more like a house almost. I feel like when you look outside it, it's not that wooded surrounding it, and
No, it
there's
feels like the first house on a cul-de-sac that's just being built. Like it feels like there's no one around them, but it still feels like a regular block in a neighborhood, which kind of does tie into the ending. They must not be that far from a neighborhood. There's kids riding bikes.
yeah, so I think that helps with the setting, and I think I do want to shout out my favorite, probably one of my favorite, if not top two favorite scenes of any horror movie ever in the history. Um, when the man in the mask, when she's in the kitchen and you see that dark hallway behind her, and just from the darkness he emerges, just like two steps forward, stares at her for a little while. He could stare at her for 10 seconds. It feels like 2 hours because you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, Jesus Christ, this guy's right here. And then all of a sudden he's just gone.
Yeah,
I
he's just fucking with her at that point.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing is like a lot of the stuff they do is almost they're messing with them, but like not even for the entertainment of their reaction. It's almost like they're just seeing what they can get away with because she never found him.
No,
So he didn't do that to actually scare her. It seems like he just did that because he was like, let's just see, if I could do this. And then he did and walked away and was like, all right, cool. Now let's see what else we can do.
that's pretty much what it is, and that just drives with what is driving these characters through this movie because the emotional arc is from the protagonist, but the antagonist. The only reason they're doing this is literally they tell you in the beginning of the, like late in the movie because you were here.
Yeah, and it's funny. And upon rewatching it, me and you were speaking, and you always give me the best film recommendations. And a while ago, you remember you let me borrow your, I don't know, Blu-ray or 4K of Summer of '84.
Hmm.
And you remember you told me that ending. You were like, you're not going to believe it. Well, this is kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
If you really think about it, because at the end of this film, the bad guys win.
100%. And like there is no happy ending, and then we just see him, and the little closing line, I believe, is that it'll be easier next time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they
Yeah.
just like this is what either this is their first time doing this and like they wanted to see how far they can go, but they are just straightforward sociopaths who do not have a care about these individuals and what they're going through. We know what they're going through, but do these people even know what they're going through, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that later on in the films it kind of loses. But I also, to just keep comparing it to other films, I also kind of get like original Michael Myers vibes from these three characters, where they're almost just more like boogeyman and boogie women. They're just monsters. They never really in these like compromised positions. We don't hear them scream or cry or beg for their life, or they just kind of seemingly are always in control. They don't really ever have a moment of worry. And then when it's all done, they very calmly kill everyone, get in the car, drive away, and move on. There is no like, oh man, they might lose in this film. It's
No,
just very like they are an unstoppable force.
which is something that they do a full 180 on, which we'll get to in chapter one. Is that because in this movie, it never feels like Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman have a chance. They feel like they're always definitely working from from the defensive, where these people, like, they never feel like they're ever at a threat for them. Like they're easily gonna win this battle, even when the other guy shows up. Basically, they set him up, and I mean that is the most shocking scene in the movie. Like, I could never imagine that. That'd be like the equivalent of me shooting you in the face.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you're tucked away in a closet with a gun thinking like you're gonna die, and then I show up like, John, I'm here to help, and you blow me away. And then like
Yeah,
you think though you killed the bad guy, only to turn the corner and you're like, oh shit.
that moment, like him, like screaming, like he didn't have a mask on, like, and you don't know, like, holy shit, he doesn't know what he even did yet.
Yeah, and I was gonna say too, like and that's another thing it does. Like we talked about the tension building and how it takes its time. Um, it really that scene, he walks in, he's screaming for him, he can't hear him because like the music, he finds, the shattered glass, broken cell phone, whatever it is, he sees the scene and you see them with the gun and they keep doing the scene like back and forth, the guy walking through, the guy in the closet, and as the viewer, like, dude, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And a lot of times I feel like in horror movies what they do is they'll build you up to that moment and then they don't. Right? Like he doesn't shoot him. He just says, "Oh Jesus, you scared the shit out of me," and then maybe man in the mask comes from behind and stabs him. Something like that is very generic and cliche. But the strangers looked at that and were like, "No, no, no. We want this to be the worst experience for our main characters as possible. So he is blowing this guy away."
Yeah, exactly. And like it's shocking, it comes out of nowhere. And then the fact that he has to get back up from this and like still keep going for him to survive. Like, I wouldn't want to survive anymore. Like now you have this trauma, the trauma of this night. Like it'd be rough to even want to continue on.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to just kind of the overall film, that they more than anything, the three strangers really psychologically mess with you. They really, as soon as you think like we'll go out this door, there's someone knocking at it. They try to open the curtain and go out a sliding glass door, there's writing all over the glass. Like they
Mm-hmm.
really trap you in this house and make you realize like, listen, you can do what you want, but you are never going to get out of this situation.
Nope. It's over for you. I just love it. And then it builds up to the great conclusion. And one thing, just real quick on the cinema, I love the beautiful burnt orange, like the warm coloring of this movie. I really think it's very unique. It does still feel very like 2008-ish, where it's a little bit like, like lower quality, although I haven't seen the 4K yet, which might fix a lot of the complaints, because I've noticed with 4K Blu-rays, and that's why I'm excited to see Friday the 13th, 2009 on 4K. Because if you remember our conversation, my biggest complaint is that ugly ass cinematography.
Hmm.
But I've seen 4Ks fix that, so it's possible that the new 4K for The Strangers actually does fix that problem.
Yeah, I'm hopeful too. I mean, it's very of the time. You talked
Yeah,
about a
it's
lot when
very
we
oh
review
08.
horror movies then. Yeah, like I feel like oh 07, oh 08, oh 09, whatever came out then, it always has that like orange tint over it.
Mm-hmm. But
And
it's of the time, but it kind of does date it. But I actually think it works for this movie because of the way they light the inside of their house. Like, it's not like overly bright. Maybe that's how I light my house, is very warm, because I hate bright lights like a gremlin.
bright light, bright light.
It does the same thing to me it does to them.
Got a bunch of little Johns running around in the house. Can't feed them after midnight. Be careful.
But after the classic that was The Strangers, it took 10 years to get The Strangers Pray at Night, which is crazy. It went through so many just development hell, and then eventually it came out. Now, were you anticipating Pray at Night, or was it one like, oh, it's coming out, I'm gonna go see it?
You know what? I feel like because there was so much time between them, it was one of them, just like the newest one, part one, same thing. It was like all of a sudden, I just happened to be scrolling through whatever I was looking at and saw, like, hey, this is releasing next month. And then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. But I didn't know. Unfortunately, you can, being a horror fan as well, you know how this goes. One horror film goes really well. Immediately they want to make it into a 13, 14 movie franchise, but there's what studio has the rights and who bought this and who owns this character, what actors don't want to come back, and it just becomes a nightmare. So 2, 3 years in, I kind of gave up hope that we would ever get another Strangers.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible actually what happened. And like you said, like most horror franchises capitalize right away and let's keep pumping them out. And it feels like that's what they wanted to do with this movie because they set it up to where we could just see stories of these people going around and tormenting other people. But it just seems like they couldn't get their ducks in a row and it took 10 years. And by that point, all the momentum had just been lost.
Yeah, and I think that hurt the second one. And interestingly, when I did, like, we talked about in the beginning, I did the first review for your channel, and I did Strangers and Strangers Pray at Night, raved about the Strangers like we just did, talked about Pray at Night, and I remember I watched it and I was pretty disappointed. Knowing we had this discussion here, I rewatched it, and I have to say that I think that maybe just the time between films is what really hurt it because I'm curious what your thoughts are because I think this was the first time you saw it, but upon rewatching, I actually feel it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, this actually was the first time I saw it. I must have seen it though because I was watching it. And I'm like, I remember that scene. I remember, and it just must have not stuck with me. Maybe I was watching it at night and fell asleep. I don't remember. It came out in 2018, so it could have been just on Netflix or something through that time. But rewatching it, I'm like, I don't get why. Because I remember specifically seeing reviews from people at the time in 2018 and them trashing this movie, and I was like, oh, really? That sucks because the first one's so good. And then when I watched it myself the other night, I'm like, I don't know what movie they were watching, but this movie's pretty damn good. It's not as good as the original, and if your expectations were to see another one of the original, then you're going to be severely disappointed. You go into this one, and I think I figured it out. I think that the first movie is like an homage to 1970s horror, whereas the second movie is like an homage to 1980s horror, but it does have some 70s horror in there, but the pacing of the movies and the scenes, this one becomes more over the top with the kills, whereas the first one, it's not about the kills, it's about the tension and these characters, which 70s movies had a lot more character development. In the 80s, the cocaine starts flowing and so does the blood, and it doesn't have to make as much sense as it does in the 1970s.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's why the first time I watched it, I went in and was thinking like, okay, the first one was so good, need to see a second one, watch it, and it's really really like night and day. There's such different movies. Everything from like you said, the pacing of it, the lighting is much brighter and
The
more.
music.
Yeah, the music. You texted me. You're like, dude, I love the soundtrack, and immediately I knew you would. You're such a like a '80s rock ballad kind of.
It's
It's
horrible.
funny that you loved it, but it fits though. And the thing is, first time watching it, I was like, you lose everything The Strangers is. It's a slow build, tense.
Mm-hmm.
The fear is more in knowing they're there, but never knowing what they're doing. And this one just became more like, Jason and Leatherface and all where it was just like, let's go. We're just going to start kill, 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 get as wild as we can. But I actually, I think that was the smart play because it's really difficult to make a sequel. But imagine they just rehashed
The
the
first
first one
one.
again.
Mm-hmm. People would have
People
complained
would be
about
just
that too.
livid.
People would have complained that they just are redoing the same thing over and over. They tried something different. The biggest flaw of the second one is you don't really care too much about this family that they set up. But I do like the trailer park. I thought that was a really cool setting.
Yeah, so in my first review, I rewatched it and I actually complained about that, saying it was too big of a setting. But I must have not been paying attention that much when I watched the first one because I actually didn't realize it is fenced in all the way. Like it
Yeah.
is a closed off thing. So while it's a bigger area than the house they were containing, there still seems to only be like one road in, one road out kind of situation.
And they set it up that they're like the only people there except for the aunt and uncle who they think are there. But unfortunately, we see them get murdered in the opening scene, which is very much a 1980s setup. In the first movie, they don't do any setup where they do that. Oh, let's get the people into the killing right away. In the first one, we're just with the couple, and then it slowly progresses. Whereas in this one, we see them killing, and we know they're going to come back. We already established who they are because of the first movie. So now we get characters that can be throwaway characters, and then we just go right into it being kind of like a 1980s slasher film in a way.
Yeah, and in the first review I did say that it was very cookie cutter, very much a Hollywood cash
It is,
grab kind of thing.
but I think they knew it was cliche though, because they literally put homages to movies in there like Scream, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then Christine, a car on fire chasing somebody.
Yeah, it's funny because you said to me like, "Oh, I love they have the Texas Chainsaw homage," and I was like, "Oh, I don't remember that." And then I rewatched it, and then when you said that, I was like, "Let me keep an eye out for some more." And then I see the car on fire slowly chasing the girl, and I'm like, "This is literally Christine. You could cut and paste this into Christine, and it looks exactly the same." So
Yeah,
they definitely did that, and I think that was again, upon rewatching it, I appreciated it more because they knew what they were doing. They knew like, listen, we either do a complete redo of the first one and people are going to say we're unoriginal and they hate it, or we go the opposite direction where now it's over the top. Now we have a serial killer. Now we have our Jason, our Leatherface, our Freddy, our funny people who just go nuts and kill. And I think although it will never be as good as the first one, I think they made the right choice.
I agree. It never will be as good as the first one, unfortunately. Character development is a real thing that you need in movies, and I've noticed this actually about you because you were a big fan of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Um, what's that one movie where I don't know if it's the 1970s or the 1980s, but The Town That Feared Sundown. I know that's one of
Yeah,
your big ones. So you really do like more of like the 70s horror like pacing of movies, I've noticed. So I wonder if that
yeah,
has your connection to like The Strangers more than like The Strangers Prey at Night too.
yeah. I think you know what it is like with everything. I always like deeper, like you said, character development. Like music, I'm like a lyric guy. If I like the lyrics in a song, I like the song. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, it just sounds good, so I listen to it. I feel like that's kind of 70s versus 80s. If you're
Hmm.
and listen, I like 80s films. I love Friday the 13th. I love, all the Halloween's the Nightmare on Elm Streets, sleepaway camps and all those kind of ridiculous over the top kind of slasher films. But I definitely, in my heart, the more I gear myself more towards the 70s because there's a little bit more development in them. There's a
Hmm.
little bit more mystery around them. There's not as much, like you said, the cocaine's not flowing yet, so they're not just let's get as many wild kills as we can in here. Like we really want to develop the tension and the fear, and and I think that's why I lean a little more towards it. Now, I will say though, 80s kind of style like Pray at Night, it's a fun watch.
Hmm.
You're not going to be deep dive into psychology of anything or whatever like that, but you'll sit there and you'll enjoy it. And if you like those traditional slasher films, you'll like Pray at Night because that's exactly what it is.
Yep, I agree. I couldn't agree more. Like it's very entertaining, Prey at Night, but as far as the film overall, it's definitely not as good. Although I have to just say the scene in the pool, that was a great scene, and with all the lighting and everything. Like, first of all, I don't think the trailer park is investing that much money into the great pool when everyone's got a trailer. But you know what? It works for the movie.
Yeah, I had a feeling as soon as they turn the power on and they have like all the neon lit up palm trees and everything, and yeah, it was. I mean, listen, some of the kills I will say too, like the mom kill where she lifts the
Oh,
daughter up out of the roof and then the daughter literally holds her mom's hand while she gets stabbed and killed in the bathroom like that. Even though there's not a lot of connection to the characters, that's one that anyone looks at and they go, "Oof,
you
could
can
you
picture that
imagine?"
being you, yeah, like watching your mother get killed. That's brutal, no matter which way you spin it.
Yeah, that's tough. And then like um, when the dad and the son crash the car, the son leaves and the
Oh,
dad is stuck, and the man in the mask comes in and he just sits there and just kind of like looks at him slowly, changes the radio station, like he takes his time, and you could tell that he is loving it.
yeah, that is one of the most brutal deaths. Just again showing how this character and how they all are is that they don't care. Like, just this guy's dying in front of him, and he's gonna do what he wants to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Pray at Night was, again, it was good. It was not the original, but I think it kind of opens up a bigger conversation of horror where, as horror fans, I think the thing is they develop this character, right? They
Hmm.
develop the main killers. They have, I keep mentioning, the Jasons, the Leatherface, the three strangers here. And horror fans want to just see them. They want to see them in a movie. But I will admit it can be a little difficult to figure out how to keep them going because, even look at like Friday the 13th, one of my favorite franchises of all time. You know, they did Takes Manhattan just to get Jason into a movie again.
Yep.
So it is difficult to keep going and to get better and better and better. But I think what they did here with the homages and kind of the 80s theme and just kind of, it seems like they just had fun with it. They were like, let's just have a good time. We're just making a slasher film. Don't go too crazy. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but I think it was the right call. And overall, I think it's a good film.
I completely agree. Which, after that movie, it didn't do as financially well as the first one, and most people, I think, thought that the franchise was probably dead. And then I heard last year, surprisingly, that they were going to make a new trilogy of Strangers movies. And of course, the first person I'm going to text is you because I know how much you love the original Strangers. Want to get your thoughts, and you were pretty excited. But I thought, okay, it's weird that they're announcing all three movies, and obviously we know how the characters end up at Prey at Night, so it's going to be a reboot of sorts. And essentially, when you go back and watch Strangers Chapter 1, it is. So, what was your excitement level, though, for Strangers Chapter 1 before you watched it?
Well, unfortunately, I had the highest of expectations because the
Mm.
previews that I saw, the pictures that were out, that like everything seemed like it was going back to its roots again, cabin in the woods style, really like here we go. I thought this was like somebody loved the first one and said it deserves better. Let me come in and make this what it should be. So my expectations were through the roof. I could not believe we were so lucky that we were going to get this.
Yeah, I was excited to see it. I didn't see it in theaters because I couldn't get there. Then everyone was saying, "Oh my god, no, it's really bad." But I was like, ah. But they haven't stopped announcing Strangers Chapter 2 and 3 yet, which they still could because that's what happened with what's that movie that just came out, Horizon: American Saga. Chapter
Hmm.
1 came out in June, and then Chapter 2 is supposed to come out in August. Chapter 1 did so bad they just scrapped Chapter 2, and it's just going right to 4K and streaming.
Oh, really? Well, that's what he gets, Kevin Costner, right? He ruined Yellowstone, the TV series, to do that. So,
That's literally, well, in his defense, he did put like $38 million of his own money into these Horizon movies, so it's a passion project for him. The guy just loves playing a cowboy.
yeah, I mean, listen, I wish it was successful because I do like all that Western stuff, but
Me too.
that it's so hard. I feel like nowadays to come out with some. I sound like old man yelling at the clouds, but I feel like modern Hollywood, it's just if you're not a Marvel movie or a remake, you're just not making money. Like that seems to just be it. You need to be a superhero or a reboot of something else. Anything original, I feel like doesn't really get that box office kind of pop that it used to.
No, and actually, the only thing that ever really does well that's original is horror, because I feel like horror fans, no matter what, if the movie's bad or good, they'll at least go and try it in theaters, which is, you know, I've watched some pretty bad horror movies this year, so, but, for the most part, you get some enjoyment out of a bad horror movie. And unfortunately, I consider Strangers Chapter 1 to be one of those bad horror movies I saw this year, which disappointed me because I still try and go into these movies like hoping to get something out of them.
Yeah, and I think, in our discussion so far, we got a lot out of the first one. We found a lot of good stuff in the second one. Genuinely, I mean, my notes for this discussion on part one were it's a nice setting, and there was the shotgun kill homage to the first one. That
Mm-hmm.
was pretty much, I mean, there's another homage where the girl's playing piano and the man in the mask is sitting in the chair behind her, which is
Yeah,
kind of like the kitchen scene.
yeah, they just tried to do everything that the first one did, like beat by beat, but the problem is they forgot to make us care about these characters. They didn't want to do the exact same thing where they have them, it's still going to be a proposal in this movie, but it goes a better way for about 40 seconds.
Yeah, and it's funny. They actually kind of almost make you not like them because they roll up in this small town in their, Volvo or BMW or whatever, and they're all, you could tell they come from money kind of thing, and they come into this small, and I feel like that's like a pretty stereotypical thing in horror, like, the wealthy people are, the dicks. And that's kind of how they set these people up, even though they don't make them act like that. It's like they show up in this small town with this air of like, we're better than this kind of thing. So you almost want them to die at a point, but like, again, that's because there's no development on them. All we know is that they're in a relationship, they're on their way to, Seattle or Portland, whatever it is, and they stop at this cabin. That's really it. There's no development in it whatsoever. So you almost kind of like don't care to see them die, which I think is a huge difference from the first one, where you're actually devastated for this couple in the first one.
No, you really are, because they didn't deserve anything that happened to them. And in this movie, you just don't care what happens to them. And that's really unfortunate. And I agree with you about the setting. One big thing in the quality jump is definitely the notice of the cinematography from 1 and 2 to this one. They definitely put some effort into that. Love the cabin in the wood setting. Thought the actual cabin itself was well designed. And even like the kills, like they look good. They put some effort into stuff. It's just that it just feels like it's a cheap knockoff of the original to me.
Yeah, and that's when this is now I want to touch base on it. Like we were talking about Pray at Night, they went with the 80s route, made it totally different. And I said, the trick when you're making these sequels when it comes to horror is, fans want to see more, but you have to find a way to adapt and evolve a little bit, because part one easily could have been released in 2009 as the direct sequel to the first one. And people probably would have hated it then too, because like you said, it is just the first one over again.
And we've seen plenty of series get remakes. Like, I mean, Halloween puts out a remake every 10 years. So it's not like it's something that it can't be done. It's just, it's got to be done well. And this just lacked any heart to it. That's my biggest flaw with it. And I get they were trying to subvert your expectations by making them not separating in this movie, and then building up to them actually him proposing to her as they're about to die. And they die a very similar way, like in the chairs, being stabbed to death, but it doesn't have the emotional impact where it's just shocking watching them just be brutalized with no way to escape in the first one. It's the same here, except they want to show you Tip in the chairs a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And and that goes back to, again, I think what happens with these movies, right, is as horror fans, and I'm sure you're the same as me, the same as everyone else, the people we like and want to see in these horror movies are always the villains. That's what you want to see. No one goes to see a Halloween movie to see the victim. They go to see Michael. No one goes to a Texas Chainsaw movie to see the victims. They go to see Leatherface. And I think studios know that. So what they do is they say, okay, no one's going to care about the actual main characters of this film. They just want to see the three killers. They're not going to care about what's going on. But The Strangers is unique in that the reason they kill and everything, it like isn't really enough to sustain a movie. You need some connection. You need to almost root against them, because it's a very serious like film. They're very serious horror movies. Those 80s slashers, there's a lot of comedy in them, a lot of jokes, so like when people die the most ridiculous ways, people are just like, haha, yeah, look at that. That guy got shot in the eye by a harpoon, or, guy in the wheelchair got thrown down the stairs. Like, people are like, how ridiculous can this film get? This
Yeah,
one is not that.
people get real upset when you laugh at somebody in a wheelchair going downstairs in real life, but we can laugh at it in the movie.
Yeah, well, Jason did it, so it's really different.
He had a good
But
sense of humor too. These guys have no sense of humor.
yeah, they find nothing humorous. They sit there, and I think that's what it is. They're just the good time police. As soon as they find out someone's having a good time, they're like, not gonna happen.
Were you upset with the look change to them in the reboot?
Yeah, so that is something again, even in the second one, it was very mild, but you
Mm-hmm.
noticed it a little. But this third one, it was totally different. I mean, I don't know why, just that, like as simple as the that the man in the mask wears over his head. Why can that not just be the same bun?
I know it's already perfect. Like that's like always what I argue about when like movies like come to 4K Blu-ray and they have to change the poster art. I'm like, you have one of the best posters ever. You know, it's fine. You could just keep it.
Yeah, no one would complain, and I feel
No.
like that's, which is odd because storyline, it was almost identical to the first, but then they decided that the one change they were going to make was the look
Hmm.
of the three characters. Like, it's just a weird choice. It makes me think, like, a little off topic, but another series that I really love is the Jeepers Creepers movies, and by God, how those have gone downhill too.
Same.
And yeah, it was almost the same thing where it was like the new one that just came out like a year ago, 2 years ago. I think it's called Reborn or something.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah, I watched it just to see how bad it was because that was another one where you reviewed here on the channel was the Jeepers Creepers movies, and exactly they just nosedive and like I mean the only difference is at least this movie looks good. That Jeepers Creepers movie looks atrocious.
Yeah, I mean the look is terrible, but like the overall arching theme is like first one good, second one good, third one, even in Jeepers Creepers, the third one was just ridiculous. It went off the rails. And then the fourth is the Reborn one, which is like I will never rewatch that one. There is no reason to go back and rewatch that. It is so bad. And I guess at least with this one, part one, it wasn't so bad that I would never go back to it, but I would probably only go back to it if like they come out with part two and it really is a continuation, just so that I refresh my memory of the first one.
Yeah, that's fair. I would definitely probably rewatch this one, especially if chapter two is coming out. And I'm hoping that if chapter two is really coming out, that they see the criticisms of this one and they adjust accordingly and try and understand. Like my thing is I think that because of how this one ends, with it to be continued and she didn't die, is they focus too much on an entire trilogy instead of focusing on making this movie good on its own.
Yeah, which I guess I could see that because if you look at a lot of trilogies, films that knew they were going that route. I mean, hot button issue, but like the Dark Knight trilogy. A lot of people think Batman Begins was the worst one of that trilogy, but
Wow.
now you disagree.
It's amazing because it's the best one of the trilogy.
Wow. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Interesting. Interesting. I don't think it's the worst. I'm a Dark Knight guy. Like the Joker and everything in that one was so good, but I do think it's better than Dark Knight
Rises.
Rises. Yeah. But I think a lot of times with movies, when the studio knows there's going to be two, three, four films coming down, the first one is always just the foundation. So it almost doesn't really get as much love as the rest because it's like we just need to like shoehorn in all of this stuff. It will all make sense in, part two, part three, and so on. But right now, it's kind of going to be crappy because it's just standalone, and they just need to get this in.
Yeah, and especially if they don't finish it, now that to be continued thing at the very end of this will be completely meaningless and all for naught. They could have ended it how the original one ended it, where now they're just on the run and this couple died. Where it seems like they want to go like a revenge route in the second one. I'm not too sure because that doesn't exactly fit the themes of the Strangers movies.
Yeah, which is weird because, like, how else do you go? It's got to either be they come back and kill her because she's still alive, or, like you said, she becomes like a private detective who just travels the country responding to cases of mysterious murders until she's on the trail of the three strange. Like it just doesn't really.
Or
I,
she could go work at a child psychiatry house and help the kids who have been tormented by these people as well. Happened in Dream Warriors.
Look at that. See, I went opposite with the remake, or well, not remake, but the newest Texas Chainsaw, where the girl from the original came out of retirement to finally kill Leatherface.
With that
That's where
shocker.
I went. But I like your route. That's a good one.
If only they could just get in dreams. I'm sure they're haunting people, who they've tormented.
Yeah, I just don't know, and I'm concerned because obviously, the first one is in like my top three of all time of any horror film, and it has not gone that well with the sequels, and now the third, and it's just I have some concerns about where they're going to take this, what this character is going to be. Unless somehow there's some sort of plot twist where she kills like Dollface or the pinup girl and then becomes her.
That's
That
a
would be
good
kind of
theory.
cool.
I've never thought about that, where they actually like a survivor, almost like in the Saw franchise. Now you join them.
Yeah, like that would kind of, maybe it starts off as she's like hunting them, but then, maybe she does kill Dollface, and Man in the Mask looks at her and is like, "Oh, now you're one of us," and like hands her a knife, and she puts the mask on, and that's like how the second one ends, and now the survivor is part of it, or I don't, something like that has to happen, because if they just do three movies that are just the same as this part one, just people in a cabin getting murdered, it's never gonna. I don't think it'll see a third. I think part two will flop, and they'll just can part three.
Yeah, which would be unfortunate because it's like you promised a set of movies, and because you just weren't able to hit the quality that people are expecting, basic quality. Um, it cost you a franchise that at this point is the first movie is very beloved and is considered a classic. The second one is, it did receive mixed reviews, so there were people out there who did like it, but some people just trashed it. And now this movie is just people just at its best were disappointed.
Yeah, and that's, it's a downhill trend for sure. The drop off is, not as steep from one to two. There's a slight drop off, but again, it's an enjoyable enough film. But the drop from two to three is, the fact that there are people who literally say don't bother going to see it. That tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, which is just, that's something you just never want to hear, which is upsetting because, again, the stranger's name at this point, 16 years later, does still carry value. But before we end the video, you originally reviewed these, you gave these scores. So I figured, why don't we give some scores to these now after rewatching them you 2 years later? And for me, it's been a while. So what would you give The Strangers from 2008 now compared to 2022?
So back when I did the first video, the first Strangers movie, I actually gave it an 8 out of 10, which surprised me. I rewatched the review. I actually, and this is, hot take, biased 100%, I'm going 10 out of 10. I think Strangers is one of the best horror movies ever made. The first one of the best horror movies ever made. I will rewatch it constantly. It deserves that high of a ranking in my opinion.
Well, I won't give it a 10 out of 10, but I definitely raised my score on this one, and I'm going to go 9 out of 10. It's a very, very, very well made horror movie. Has some great moments, and it always capitalized on the fact that it's realistic. These are real people who don't have superpowers. This could happen. That's always one thing I love about that movie is, if you have a house like that, sociopaths are a real thing in this world. And I think this movie was able to capture that perfectly. Now, what about Strangers Prey at Night?
So, Pray at Night, I was pretty hard on during my first review, and I actually gave it a 6 out of 10, which I am changing again. Actually, I'm gonna go 7 out of 10 for it. I bumped it up just 1 point, but I was very hard on it the first time. I should not have been as hard as I was on it. I think it's a fun watch. It doesn't come near the original, but it's definitely a good movie that I have no problem. I would rewatch it 100%.
Yeah, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. So I really enjoyed it this time. And I might even one day get bumped up to an 8, seeing how I like it on a rewatch. A lot of that is personal bias and taste in film and, soundtrack, that 80s tone. That's something that, you're going to speak right to my heart. You're going to check some of my personal boxes. So I'll give you a little bit of extra credit because, yes, I don't want it to get too close to the original because I think that's a classic and it's a much better movie. But the enjoyment factor of Prey at Night really does help me to enjoy it. Love the movie a little bit more than I probably should. You know, but Strangers Chapter One. What about that one? I'm curious what your score would be on this one.
I'm trying not to be super hard because, again, I was really rough on Pray at Night and liked it on rewatch. I don't have high hopes on rewatch if I ever rewatch part one. It's low, dude. I might honestly go 4 out of 10, honestly, and it's only a 4 because setting was really nice and we at least got to see the three killers in it. But plot wise, originality. It falls really, really short for a lot of reasons to me.
I completely agree. That's literally the number I had in my head was 4 out of 10 for the same exact reasons. It's a shell of the original. The only improvement you can argue was the cinematography, but that should be improved 16 years later. So that's a low bar to hit. And really, that's it. And a couple of kills in the moment, like the homage to the first one with the shotgun. The only thing is right away you first just think of the original.
Yeah,
So just
100%.
watch the original then.
Yeah, you'll get a lot more out of the original. That's why it's, scored so much higher than this one. It's a shame. I hope, I really hope that your thought of it being the first in a trilogy, so it kind of just, missed the mark a bit, but once we get more, it'll get better is right. But
It's
I,
happened
I
before in horror. Like Ouija is bad, but then Ouija Origin of Evil is really good. The Annabelle movies, the first one's the worst of the three. So, as long as you learn from your mistakes, which I know a lot of people have a hard time doing because money always comes first. But if you can learn from your mistakes, you see what people are saying and you can course correct. It's not too late.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just hoping that they do that. And I don't know, honestly, not speaking as an expert, because I don't know how you carry the next two films in this to make it the best. That would be obviously a full-time job. That's why writers and directors and everyone have that as their full-time job. It's tough to come up with something that's going to stay true to the original without being so cookie cutter, while also evolving without becoming unrecognizable to the franchise. So it's a tough it's an obstacle. It's definitely a tough challenge they have ahead of them. But they're the ones who announced that they were doing a trilogy. So it kind of it's on you guys. You could have just called this The Strangers 3 or Strangers Origin or something, and never admitted there was going to be two or three after it, and people may have been a little bit less hard on you. But now we know that you allegedly have two and three in the pipeline, so they better deliver.
I completely agree. We'll have to just see what happens. My fingers will be crossed on that. But I think we've covered everything on the Strangers franchise today. There's just one thing I want to ask you before we get out of here because I haven't talked to you in a while. And while I have you here, have you been watching Raw at all in WWE?
Dude, CM Punk Drew McIntyre feud.
That's what I wanted to ask about.
And you know what? It's one of those things that shows you sometimes it's not about the belt. They're battling over a friendship bracelet.
The friendship, right? It doesn't matter what the MacGuffin is, they can do it because people just want to see them fight.
I'm excited. Do you think? I mean, he's Raw last night. Punk said he's gonna make him bleed. Do
Oh,
you
there's gonna
think?
be there's gonna be blood in this cell. This I think might be the most brutal Hell in a Cell we've had in years.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I think that Punk has done a really good job since being. I mean, obviously, he got hurt and everything, but I
They
think this
dragged
Drew
that out
story has.
perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, he landed in this Drew story, and it's been great. I mean, Drew McIntyre too. Honestly, he's holding his own. He's doing really great work as the villain in this, and it's believable because I don't know if they really don't like each other, if they're just working together because it's business, but you believe that this is hatred. You believe that one of them is going to try to like mankind the other off the cell and kill him.
They got to go that route with something because right now you've had two matches that have both been brutal. Now you're selling it Hell in a Cell. It's Bad Blood, the original Hell in a Cell pay-per-view name. It has to be brutal, and I expect it to be. It's just so funny how this. I just thinking of Drew McIntyre because he's probably my favorite wrestler. Him and Rhea Ripley right now.
Mm.
And I remember back in 2009 when he debuted, we used to watch SmackDown every Friday, and he was the chosen one by Vince McMahon, and I fucking hated that guy. And I know
Yeah,
you did too.
yeah, no, that character was brutal. And it's funny because his character was almost like the first attempt at Roman Reigns. You know,
Yeah,
because it was just shove him down your throat. He's gonna win everything, and he did. He was IC champion, all that stuff as that character. But it just didn't click because fans were like, "Dude, no, we don't want this." Same with Roman. They made Roman the good guy, shoved him down our throats. As soon as he turned into a bad guy who just didn't give a shit about anything, people loved him. And the same thing with Drew. Now Drew was able to leave, become an absolute monster, and now that he's back as just Drew McIntyre, just badass, doesn't care, goes in and kicks ass in the ring. He's awesome.
Yeah. His character is just basically saying what everyone's thinking out loud. He's like, and yet he's the bad guy.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, I feel like that's a lot of wrestling. The heel is always the one who's just telling the truth. They're
Yep.
just being honest, but they're being honest about the person that the fans like, so fans hate that.
Yeah, they know exactly what they're doing with the storyline because CM Punk, for him to be able to come back like this, I know me and you didn't want him back, but he's handled it perfectly. He's saying all the right things backstage. Maybe he's just a changed guy, and being back here, maybe he's just like, I'm back in the nest. Maybe I'm a fucking idiot. I've learned from it. I don't know.
Yeah, I was surprised, because when he first left, obviously, when he first left way back when WWE, I was on his side in the whole thing. I was like, yeah, everything he's saying is messed up in W, because that was peak, like, well, I guess not even peak. That was all-time low WWE. That was, Ryback and all that stuff going on, and Roman in the middle of the terrible good guy push, and it was still kind of like Cena wins LOL era, and it was pretty boring Vince McMahon wrestling. So when he left, I was like, hell yeah. And then when he went to AEW, I was like, all right, cool, get to see CM Punk again. And when all that happened there, I kind of in my head was like, this guy, maybe this guy is the problem, and I was like, maybe he just does need to leave. But since he's been back, you're right, like, he seems to have great rapport backstage. It seems like he's just kind of that guy who, like, he's almost like a traditionalist in the business. He's like, this is wrestling, this is how you handle things, this is how things should be done. And when, kind of like the internet craze takes over, he gets really pissed off and doesn't like it, which I can understand because I don't like a lot of that stuff either. So it seems like he's in a really good spot now with Triple H running the show, and his matches, his promos, everything he's doing right now is incredible. And I have to, right now I have to take back, I was worried and I didn't think he should come back because I thought it was going to be bad, but since he's been back, I'm happy he is, because he is one of the most entertaining segments of any show he's on.
I completely agree. I always look forward to him and Drew on anything when they're doing it, and it's been great. And it's funny, I read an article that said he's got a lot of, like, being a mentor to people, and like he's apparently working at NXT a lot with Shawn Michaels. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, CM Punk didn't do drugs or anything, but everybody hated him backstage. And who else was really hated backstage that needed to redeem himself? Shawn Michaels. So if anyone can relate to, a person trying to change, I think it's Shawn Michaels, and I like to hear things like that.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, I feel like he may have alluded to that actually, that when he's done with his run now wrestling, that's what he wants to do. He wants to go down to NXT with, Shawn Michaels and the team, and help coach those, up and coming wrestlers and everything, which I think would be great. You see a lot of guys who have, I mean, FTR, I think they're one of the best tag teams in the world. I miss them so much. I wish they were back in WWE.
I know.
Because they were awesome. I mean, they got, they got the short stick in a lot of the stuff in WWE, but I think if they came back now with Triple H running it, they'd be presented as the badass tag team they are. And, from everything I see, they're close with CM Punk. They got a lot of tutelage from him. So, the Ricky Starks, I think, too, over at AEW said CM Punk was great to him. And there are a lot of guys who say that CM Punk is a great mentor as long as you're on his good side. I think maybe there's just a lot of young guys who didn't want to be under the tree of knowledge. They thought they were better than him. They didn't like something he did to one of their friends years ago or whatever. And, credit to CM Punk. He's a man of honor. If he feels a certain way, he's not going to be two-faced about it,
He'll tell you flat out. That's the thing about him. But he can change, and people can change, so we can forgive him for some stuff as long as he seems to be honest about it. Like, he's like, oh, that was probably hard to work with. If Bret Hart could forgive Shawn Michaels, I think anything can happen.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm excited for it. The rest of the, a lot of the rest of the show, I think the new Bloodline stuff is on SmackDown is, it's pretty good. I'm excited that Roman's back, and
Yeah,
I
it
do.
needed Roman.
Yeah, because I don't know. What's your take on Cody and his title run so far?
It just feels like your typical babyface finally overcomes the odds and wins it. And unfortunately, that's the end of that story because there's nowhere else to really go. when you're the champion and a babyface champion, it's almost impossible to maintain that run. Babyfaces only really work as the chaser.
I'm glad you said it because I 100% agree. I think, remember when he first came back and lost to Roman at Mania, and everyone was like, "You made the biggest mistake of your life."
No, it
I
wasn't.
Yeah, because then that chase, that year that he spent between Mania to Mania again to get back there, that chase is what led us to the whole Rock situation, the whole everything that we got, and then that win was one of those moments like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And I feel bad because it's not, I don't blame Cody for it. I think Cody's a great wrestler. I think his character, he's one of the best faces in the business in the sense that, like, I don't really think there are a lot of people that boo him. It's not like Cena face where only the kids love him and everybody else boos him. Like, he is over. People love him. And I do too, 100%. I just think that, like, it's hard, like you said, being the face, chasing it is more entertaining because you want to see the villain fall.
Mm-hmm.
But
But for
then
the
once
villain
the
to
villain
fall,
falls,
yeah, but for the villain to fall, we have to build them up as this chicken shit heel. But then you get the moment. I'm thinking when you think about it, even when Daniel Bryan won his title at WrestleMania 30, every time they overcome, you never think about their reigns after they win it. You always think about the heel title reigns, actually.
yeah, because they're the ones that you want to see them lose. So you go in and I mean, you think of Roman's title reign and it's like so many moments. All the matches with Kevin Owens, the unbelievable match with Sami Zayn
Uh,
in Canada. I mean, there's so much, all the Brock Lesnar stuff, all the Cody Rhodes stuff, everything he did. There's some Randy Orton in there. I mean, he wrestled everybody, but everything he did is memorable in that title run because you wanted him to lose
and he
and he
didn't.
didn't. And you were just like, son of a bitch. But now, like, Cody's champion and it's fine. He's doing fine. But it's like, it's just weird. It's different. You're not like as invested almost because you're like, all right, well, yeah, he's champion. So, okay.
Yeah, that's it. Eventually, honestly, the best way to go is eventually have him get screwed over for the title and, maybe fall down the pecking order a little bit, have some matches, and then eventually go after the title again. Because I think that's the only way you could really, because it's just, we know how his matches are going to end. No offense, I love AJ Styles and Kevin Owens, but you never thought they were going to win. You just thought that he was going to have a good match with him, and he did, but he'd win.
Yeah, and and I think that's tricky too, especially now. I don't know that there's like a lot of guys who are viable threats. Like even when Roman was champion, all throughout the first 11 years of that 40-year reign, it was he was fighting Kevin Owens. I love Kevin Owens. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, but I never thought he was going to win.
No.
You don't. They don't have that. The first time I remember thinking, oh my, they might do this was Sami Zayn.
I thought that they
But
would do that, but it works better with him. Like that match, either way, or when you think back on it, it was still great.
yeah, 100%. And Sammy got bigger because of it. The way they ended it and everything. It was great. But who's the viable? Who do you think is next in line to actually take the belt off of Cody?
The only guy I see out there besides Roman who could take it back at any moment is Jacob Fatu. Is that one guy they seem to really love? Now I don't know too much about him before this, but I've heard he's a phenomenal wrestler.
Yeah, and I agree. Now the question is that risky because he hasn't, he's been in the company for a minute.
I know it is very risky, and but that's the only guy. I mean, unless I would love to see it. I agree with you. Kevin Owens is one of the best wrestlers. To see him do the Kevin Owens thing and turn heel, and have him take the title, that would be cool. I mean, I don't think they'll do it because Kevin Owens doesn't necessarily need the title anymore. But I love the guy, and I think that if he this is it's got to be on SmackDown. It's the only other threats on SmackDown other than Randy Orton, but Randy Orton's another one that doesn't need another title reign.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing. I think you either go give it to Randy because is he one away from tying Ric Flair or
I
beating Ric
think he is
Flair?
at 15, which surprised me. But then I thought about it. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's been around for 23 years.
Yeah, so I mean you could either go that route and give it to him just to tie, or Kevin Owens has mentioned in interviews I think I saw recently that he's close. Like when his contract is up, he's close to retiring, calling it a day. Maybe you give him one, even if he's a transitional champion, right? Even if you don't want Cody to lose to Jacob Fatu because you want to build up that match for Cody to dethrone him like he dethroned Roman or whatever. Like you could give it to Kevin Owens, Let him have one last run before he calls it a day, and have him lose to Jacob, and build that up for, maybe he injures Kevin and that's Kevin's retirement angle or something. And then Cody's, it's his revenge tour. That was my friend. What, despite what he did to me to get the title, like, you can't be doing that, whatever you do. But those are the only two guys I can think of that really, AJ's kind of been gone for a while.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know who else does it.
Yeah, AJ's like on his last legs towards retirement. The fake retirement thing he did was pretty funny, actually,
Yeah,
which I
that
like.
was
Yeah.
good.
It's still always. I know it's been like 10 years already, and I think his time in WWE is more than TNA at this point, which is crazy. But I'll always still think of him as the TNA guy.
Yeah, yeah, I will too, because I remember that, dude. TNA was, especially back then, like him, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels,
Kurt Angle,
um, yeah, Kurt Angle when he was there,
Percocet
out
Angle.
of his mind. Sting was there. They had Abyss and all, the Motor City Machine Guns. All those
Yeah.
guys were just like the six-sided ring. All that stuff was sick. That was genuine. Like I know they never reached like crazy, crazy heights, but before like they changed and Hulk Hogan came in and the four-sided ring came in and they made all that kind of stuff. When they were the six-sided TNA Impact Zone with all those guys, that was just the bet. They were so entertaining. Those shows were awesome.
I completely agree. It was a great time, and it's a shame what happened. Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff came in and ruined the entire thing. I mean, they're doing good now, actually.
Yeah, I saw they're on the come up again. They changed their name again. I like that WWE has brought a lot of those guys over. I know the women's champion for TNA or the Impact, the Knockouts champion,
Yeah,
has been doing some NXT stuff. She was in the Rumble too, I think last year, right?
yeah. They seem to have like a working relationship. Even what's her name, who used to own TNA? I always forget. Dixie Carter. She's been like at shows, WWE shows. So I guess once Vince was gone, I feel like Triple H is more just like some of this stuff is just silly in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like if you can have, and I don't mean it as like a developmental area, because obviously a lot of the guys in TNA are, that's where LA Knight came from, like a lot of the guys are seasoned veterans and, really have paid their dues and have made it. But, it's just another outlet, another place to get talent, another place to, and crossing over is never bad for business. It makes
No.
WWE look good because now that door that was shut off where they didn't even acknowledge other companies, now they seem like they're friendly, and other companies that are smaller get a pretty big rub by having their champions in the Royal Rumble or main eventing in NXT or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's starting to feel more like an actual sport now, which they kind of went away from, where there was all just sports entertainment. Now it's back to being wrestling, and these guys are athletes, and every match is important, and we're going to bring in people, the best wrestlers from around the world, not just the people who work for us. And that's the best for everybody in general.
Yeah, I agree. I have another, my final question for you while we're on the topic of wrestling.
Oh man,
Your
I'm
thoughts?
excited. I am excited because I mean the last run of Fox on Fox was terrible with them blocking out the crowd and cursing, and now that'll all be off the table, and they'll probably get more eyes on it. More people have Netflix than they do have cable.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you're going to get a lot more people who might be scrolling through and see it on there. They stop, take a look, might like it. Now, my thing is, and I see everybody saying it, it seems to be the popular opinion, so I'm sure WWE is wise to it and they know. I don't think we go full Attitude Era. I don't think we
No,
start dropping F-bombs and every match has blood and we start, doing live sex celebrations like Edge and Lita again and whatever. But I do think it opens the door for something where if you have a rivalry like this CM Punk and Drew McIntyre thing, where you can really get down and dirty and gritty and blood and violence and, you can really push the envelope as long as you don't make it every single promo is cursing at each other.
exactly. It doesn't feel valuable then if you water it down. Like we were saying with CM Punk versus Drew, like if that's a bloody mess, we don't get that often, and then you don't do it for a while. It can't be like how the Attitude Era was, where everything was over the top. Some of that stuff you put sprinkling in there, but you have a show to do. So like you could have a little bit for everybody. It doesn't have to be all everything is live sex celebrations.
Yeah. No, I agree. And even with the blood thing, I think you're right, and I think they're doing a lot of good stuff in that regard, um, the gimmick pay-per-views. Hell in a Cell lost its mystique because it was literally a monthly, it was a pay-per-view every year. Matches that didn't have that magnitude of hatred in it went into a Hell in a Cell match, and it was like, I guess, but no, thank you. Like this Drew CM Punk match, it fits, it makes sense, and they're gonna deliver. And I think that's the kind of stuff they need to do is save the strap matches, save the Hell in a Cell, save Last Man Standing and ambulance match, and specifically blood. Do not be a John Moxley and bleed on your entrance. Like, save that for special matches.
It only makes sense, but to him, bleeding is the thing that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
So, but this is great, man. And I mean, obviously we strayed a little bit away from the strangers, but I had to talk a little wrestling with you since I had you. So, but I had a great time, man. I hope you did too.
Yeah, of course. No, I appreciate you, like I said, setting up the time, fitting me into your schedule. I know you're busy. The channel's doing great, so I really appreciate you finding the time for it. And congrats, man. The channel looks like it's, again, like I said, it's doing great. It's growing. Hopefully, this helps. And, I'd be more than happy, especially spooky season. Love
Yeah,
the horror movies. So we could do a little more collaborating if you need the content.
I would love to do some more collaborations with you, man. I always just enjoy these, and I hope you guys all enjoyed them too. And if you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends. You know the whole deal. We just appreciate you guys checking out this video. Let us know what you thought of this, and let Dennis know what you think of him. He might not be the best looking, but he is pretty cool. So, but we'll see you guys around. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. It is Friday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. And every single video that we do here on Friday, I'm going to ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you got to do is answer one in the comment section below. As long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video where I'll put your name on a magic wheel, spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And we just got done talking about the strangers. It is spooky season, so I want to ask you guys, what is the most underrated horror franchise of all time? And then I also just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think is the most underrated horror film in general of all time? So make sure you guys answer one of those 2 questions in the comment section below. And then don't forget to come back to Tuesday's video to see if you are a lucky winner. And thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends about us. And also, guys, we have channel memberships. So if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo and Jason Morin, or even a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, you can find all that information in the description below. But guys, if you got no money to throw away, don't worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.